Hey, what is going on, Twintendo Nation? Hope you're having an awesome day, and since it's been a while, I also hope you had a great new year. Now that we're into 2018, I thought now would be a great chance to look at some of the best games that came out last year. Now unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to play all the games I wanted to in 2017, such as games I really wanted to play like Persona 5, as well as games I've heard were amazing by critics and players alike, such as Horizon Zero Dawn. However, the majority of the games on this list are ones that I've either completed or put enough time into to really know whether I like it or not. Now for games to qualify for this list, they must have released in 2017, so I won't be counting games that I played last year that released before 2017, such as Trails of Cold Steel 2, which by the way, I really recommend. It's such a great game. Additionally, the games on this list will only be judged on one thing and one thing only: how much I enjoyed them. Now before I let you guys know about my favourite games of the year, I want to hear from you guys. What were your favourite games from 2017 and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And without further ado, let's start this video. So starting off the list is a remake of a game 28 years in the making, which was my first purchase on the Nintendo Switch's eShop. This game is Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap, which was originally released on the Sega Master System in 1989. The remake has upgraded the game with beautiful artwork and visuals, as well as a remastered musical score that still keeps the charms of the original. However, what makes this game truly unique is how you can flip between the upgraded remake and the original game with its retro styled graphics and music with the press of a single button. Now in terms of plot and gameplay, the game does feel dated, even with all the upgraded graphics and new inclusions. The game is also quite short, as it takes around 6 to 10 hours to beat if you know what you're doing. Fortunately though, the game is sold at a modest price of £18, which is around $25 if you live in the US, on the Nintendo eShop. So its short story is justifiable. But I definitely think this game is worth it for its beautiful painted art style, as well as being able to switch between the remaster and the retro version of the game seamlessly whenever I want to. Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Trap is a perfect example of how to make a remaster of a retro game, and it's definitely one of the hidden gems of 2017. Coming in at number 9 is probably my favourite game I'm terrible at. This is PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. Now I've never really been a big PC gamer, but after buying a gaming laptop during the summer, I finally got the chance to play PUBG properly, as my current PC was only just able to run it with limited success. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not the best at this game, as I'm not really used to playing games with a mouse and keyboard. Now with most games that I'm not very good at, I normally move on from it and play something else. However, there's just something so incredibly addictive about PUBG, which is all the more strange when most of my playtime has been on the same map. It's hard to put a finger on why the experience of playing PUBG is so refreshing, but every game feels unique. With such large maps, 100 players, and randomised gear every game, it feels like a fresh challenge. On the other hand, PUBG is far from perfect, as the game does feel unfinished, especially with its inconsistent servers. Personally, I don't think that it should have come out of early access yet, but I do think the game will still continue to improve over time, and I'm looking forward to seeing what changes will be made in PUBG for 2018. Following PUBG is the latest game on this list, as it was only released at the start of this month. This is the Nintendo Switch exclusive Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So I'll be honest, I didn't exactly have the highest of hopes going into this game. I hadn't seen much gameplay of it, and I had heard mixed things about the previous games in the series, Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles X. However, to my surprise, I really enjoyed the game so far. And I say so far as I haven't finished it yet, but I have put in around 30 hours, so I definitely have a good feel for the game. As someone who is a huge fan of JRPGs, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is right up my street, with its large variety of unique areas to explore, a combat style which is nothing like I've ever seen, and there are just so many quests to go out and complete. There is also a really cool feature in the game that allows you to summon blades, which are basically living beings that you fight with. You can obtain new blades by using core crystals you acquire throughout your playthrough, and these crystals are essentially like loot boxes, and you can get some really cool blades by opening these. It kind of suppresses my urge to buy loot crates on Rocket League, because that is one of my main problems in 2017, so thankfully I can have the feeling of opening loot boxes without actually paying for them. Now although I've enjoyed this game a lot so far, there are some problems that are pretty inexcusable for a JRPG of this size. Firstly, the minimap and navigation system is pretty terrible, to say the least. This is all the more frustrating as the maps in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are gigantic, so it's quite likely that you'll get lost wandering around for quite a few hours. This has happened to me plenty of times, as well as many other players. Luckily, Monolith Soft, the developers, have heard the frustrations of players and plan to release a patch early 2018 to fix it. Now, my other problem with this game is that there is so much info to digest, and for someone who's played a lot of JRPGs, this is definitely one of the more complicated ones out there. But what was shocking for me is that there are no guides or helpful tips in the menu for you to reread in case you forgot how a certain mechanic works. For a game this complex, it should be one of the first things you include. However, if you can get past those two unfortunate oversights, then there is a brilliant JRPG to be had here. Taking the number 7 spot is the last remastered game on this list, and one I've been looking forward to for a long time. This is of course the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy. During the early 2000s, I was obsessed with everything Crash Bandicoot. I had all the games, toys, plushies, cookie jars, you name it. Crash Bandicoot was my favourite gaming series for a long time before eventually Pokemon overtook it during the mid-2000s. Without a proper Crash Bandicoot release since 2008, it looked like Crash had been long forgotten about. However, for many years there had been rumblings that a new Crash game was on the way, and 9 years later we had the original Crash trilogy on the PS4, built new from the ground up. It was so great to be playing another Crash game after so long, and although I had beaten the original 3 many times before, it was still refreshing to play them all again. I still think the original PS1 games are better, as I like the more cartoony graphics in the originals compared to the realistic look they gave the new ones. Also, some of the levels from the first Crash Bandicoot game feel very dated, especially when they're given time trials in the remaster. They weren't made for speedrunning and can be incredibly frustrating. Still, that's only a minor problem, and I was more than happy to support the release of this game, especially if it means we can get a Crash Team Racing remake one day, as that's one of my favourite games of all time. Up next is my favourite party game of the year, which came out on the Nintendo Switch. And no, don't worry, it isn't 1-2-switch. This game is Puyo Tetris. Now technically this game did come out in 2014 on the PS4 in Japan, but it was only released in the West on the Nintendo Switch and PS4 this year, so for me it qualifies for this list. Before playing this game, I had never really played a Puyo game, or even a Tetris one for that matter, but after playing one game with my brother, we were hooked for good. Our Puyo Tetris game sessions would last for hours, as we'd keep saying one more game, and before you know it, we had played 30 games in a row. In fact, when I went to sleep after playing for so long, all I could see were Tetris pieces falling and me trying to line them up. I'm not even joking, and I remember saying that to my brother, like that happened, and he said the exact same thing happened to him, so maybe I did get a bit addicted to this game. Now, I did mention earlier, this is my favourite party game this year, as it's so much fun to play with 4 people, and if you have a Switch and you're looking for a game that all the family can play and enjoy, then look no further, as Puyo Tetris can provide endless hours of fun for everyone. Coming in at the halfway point is a choice that might shock a lot of you, but I decided to place this critically acclaimed game at number 5 simply for the fact I still haven't finished playing it. This game is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Whilst I had never really been a huge fan of Zelda games, I was blown away with how incredible Breath of the Wild was. It was nothing like a Zelda game I'd experienced, and there was so much to do, it was pretty overwhelming. If anyone has this at their number 1 spot for the game of the year, then I won't have any complaints, but unfortunately for me, I didn't get to play this game as much as I liked. There have been so many good games this year, and last year as well, that have kept me coming back to this game. I mean, you know the games this year are good when I haven't even had a chance to play Persona 5 yet, which is all the more frustrating as Persona 4 is one of the best games I've ever played. But back on point, if I had finished Breath of the Wild, I'm very confident it would have been higher on this list. But regardless, I wanted to include it somewhere as it deserved a spot on this list, as the game is just that good. This is definitely a game I will be getting back to next year, and if you haven't yet had the chance to play it yourself, I highly suggest you change that. Following on from Breath of the Wild is a game that I feel is a little underrated and deserves more recognition. This game is Nioh, which I played on PS4 earlier this year, but if you're a PC gamer it was released recently and I highly recommend you get it. So what is Nioh? Well, the best way to describe it is Samurai Dark Souls. It follows the Dark Souls formula very closely but also incorporates its own style as well. As someone who loves Japanese history and mythology, it's so exciting to play a game in famous historic locations in Japan against some of Japan's best mythological creatures. Now the game is difficult, especially if you've never played a Dark Souls game before, which I actually hadn't, so it did take a lot of trial and error to complete the early parts of the game, but it's never unfair to the player. But one of the reasons I love Nioh is because it's such a challenging game, as I found games of late to be far too easy. In fact, some of my favourite gaming memories of recent years have come from this game, especially the boss battles, which are so difficult the first time you play them, with my favourite being against Nue, which really reminds me of Raiko. So if you have a PS4 or a PC, I highly recommend this game, especially if you want to challenge yourself. Taking the third spot is the last Nintendo Switch game on this list, and it was very difficult to decide between this game or Breath of the Wild. But unlike Breath of the Wild, I actually got round to finishing this one. This is of course Super Mario Odyssey, which like Breath of the Wild was such a change in direction for its series. With 17 kingdoms to explore, there is so much variety in Super Mario Odyssey to keep you coming back for hours and hours to come. Plus the inclusion of Cappy makes exploring and travelling the most fun it's ever been in a Mario game. Without buying power moons, after beating the game, there are over 880 moons to collect, which can be a little off-putting, but moons are much easier to obtain than power stars in previous Mario games. Now personally, I do prefer the challenge of going through a level to get a power star rather than collecting moons quickly one after the other, but it is a nice change of pace for a Mario game. Super Mario Odyssey, like Breath of the Wild, is a perfect example of what the Nintendo Switch is capable of. If you have just gotten a Switch for Christmas or plan to get one at a later point, then this is a must-buy game for sure. Just missing out on a number 1 spot is the best game I've played this year. In fact, it was number 1 on the list for the longest time before I changed my mind at the last minute. This game is Nier Automata. In terms of narrative and just an overall feeling from a game, Nier Automata is the best game I've played for a long time. I'm a big fan of sci-fi, and so Nier's story about androids, aliens and the concept of what it means to be human is right up my street. The combat is great, there are tons of side quests, and the world Nier's story builds is superb. Nier's story is around 60 hours long, which is pretty good for a JRPG, and some of the story towards the final act is just absolutely crazy, it's bonkers. There's so many twists and turns I didn't see coming. But the most memorable part of the entire game, and probably the most insane gaming moment I've ever experienced, comes at the credits. I don't want to spoil the surprise for anyone who's planning to play this game, but there is a choice you have to make that might just define how much this game means to you. The soundtrack for this game, by the way, is also one of the best I've ever heard. I can't think of anything bad to say about this game, it's just a work of art. So after listing off 9 incredible games, we finally reached my favourite game of the year. This might not be the best game in terms of story, graphics or even how ambitious the game is, but this game is one I enjoyed more than any other this year. This game is Tales of Berseria. Yeah, I don't think many of you saw this one coming, but I am a huge fan of the Tales of series, ever since I played my first Tales game, Tales of Xillia, over 4 years ago. Now, you're probably wondering, how did this game beat Nier Automata, even though Nier Automata is the best game I've played this year in terms of what it delivers? I think just the fact I can actually play this game alongside my brother is a big thing for me. When I think of amazing gaming memories for me, it's playing a game with someone, sitting in the same room and sharing the same experience. And of course you can do that with a single player game like Nier Automata, but it makes it all the more fun when both of you are involved. Now the last Tales game, Tales of Zestiria, I didn't really enjoy, so I was a little apprehensive about Berseria, but it was everything I wanted and more. The characters were my favourite out of any Tales game I played, and the stories was so much better than Zestiria's convoluted mess. But what makes Tales of Berseria so much more fun for me, as I've said, is the fact that I can play the entire story with my brother. There aren't too many story-driven JRPGs with co-op, so it's great to play a story-driven JRPG that it feels like both me and my brother kind of influence as we get to play together. We get to team up in battles, and there is nothing more fun than Tales of battles, believe me, especially Berseria's. I absolutely love the combat in this game. With such a great entry in the Tales series with Tales of Berseria, it's no surprise that this is fast becoming my favourite gaming franchise. But those guys are my top 10 favourite games of 2017. It's been an unbelievable year for gaming, and I can't wait to see what next year will give us. But guys, if you enjoyed today's video, then make sure to hit that like button down below, and if you like my content and want to see more, then make sure you subscribe as well to join the Twintendo Nation today. And also, I'd love to hear what you guys think about 2017 and games. Let me know if you guys had any games I shared on this list in your top 10. And yeah, Tales of Berseria fans, love to hear from you guys. I absolutely love Tales of Berseria and would love to see if anyone else does as well. But anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. Hope you've had a great 2017, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!